ask you about some interesting stories that have come out of the Web Summit, because just looking at your start, right, a startup event of 150 in Dublin to where you are, I'm sure there would be a lot of stories which are part of the folklore of these summits. So take us through some of those interesting events which didn't make the headlines but created long-term connections.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think our event, we will have about 3,000 startups in Portugal next month. We'll have about 1,500 in Web Summit Qatar in February. And with that, there's always some gems. There's always some fascinating startups coming out. As you see, my less exciting job is general counsel and lawyer for the business. So I'm always looking at tech in the legal space and innovation there. And one of the Indian entrepreneurs that joined us in Web Summit Qatar in February was a company called SpotDraft, which approaches contract management and contract drafting with AI, and that is something that's going to transform the industry. And I was very impressed with how they approached it and how they solved a problem that shifts the value proposition for the legal industry to giving advice and taking away some of those mundane tasks. So it's very exciting to see the AI revolution in a practical sense, because some of it can be a bit abstract.
All right, but taking that forward, I'm amazed to see how the applications of AI are entering our daily life more and more, and they're seen as an augmentative power rather than a replacement power. So in the field of law, the fact that a lawyer can have a very totally summarized brief of a case which would take days provided to him or her in minutes, that itself is a fantastic application. There are many more applications coming as well. But broadly, when I look at the Web Summit, considering it takes a picture of the tech scene, you're the largest gathering of entrepreneurs in the world. So what are some of the trends that you are spotting? I mean, sure, we are in the age of AI, but what are some of the upcoming trends which have caught your eye?
I think we've seen cyclical cycles of trends, and maybe some of them are less sustainable than others. Sometimes something can appear, like I would say crypto, where it has its ups and downs, but underlying that is blockchain, which is it's a fascinating technology that I think is transforming things a little bit more under the radar than the kind of headlines of crypto. So I think blockchain, look, to be honest, AI is here to stay. It's transformative, and you can see the practical use cases coming out of it. I think that is a really exciting trend, but certainly clean tech, health tech, ed tech. I think anything that is is transforming people's lives for the better is a top-tier technology innovation.
Fantastic. And from your vantage point, right, you joined Web Summit, I believe, in 2020. From the 4 years that you have seen, how do you view it from your vantage point? All these changes that have come about so rapidly, because especially in India, we saw that during the pandemic and post the pandemic, there's been such a rapid movement of digitalization, which has led to a retailization of many legacy sectors, which would have otherwise not, in a sense, come into the 21st century. From your vantage point, how do you look back into the past 4 years, and what's the next 4 years going to excite you about?
I think the evolution of founders, I think the pandemic gave them pause for thought. And maybe we've seen it. There's a number of founders that maybe were in some of the big technology companies, and COVID and the pandemic was the time for them to reflect and think, I'm going to make the leap. So we've certainly seen a surge in activity. We're at by far the largest number of startups that will attend our events this year. Over 150,000 people globally will attend our events, and thousands and thousands of startups. I think the other evolution is really interesting is there was a trend towards a single founder with a vision, and I think now we're seeing co-founders with execution value, and that is a synergy that makes for a very successful, both grounded and aspirational startup.
And considering such a collection of technologies being showcased, I mean, AI, emerging technology, so on and so forth, blockchain. How you mentioned that the Web Summit also has a significant technological IQ, building in terms of solutions so that meetings in the event are more contextual. What's going to be the next leap forward in terms of making your events more naturally connecting for people? What technologies are going to use? I
think we're going to leverage AI. We're going to continue to build upon the success of our app. And really our successes are human-based. We want to get people to meet the right person, the person they need to know and they want to know, as much as possible. But I think like event execution is a really hard thing, and a lot of it is grounded not so much in technology, but with doing a fantastic job with a fantastic team. So I think that's partly where it's not necessarily always based on our technology, but I do think that gives us a bit of an edge.
All right, and your thoughts on Indian entrepreneurship, the context that you have seen of Indian entrepreneurship throughout your events, what would you like to share? Any highlights that come to your mind?
Yeah, lots of highlights. As I said, my first time in India definitely won't be my last, and I think I've seen, blown away by the statistics. The number of, as I said, 118 unicorns is a fantastic number, and the volume of IPOs seems really exciting, and seems like it's a growing technological industry. What am I seeing? I'm seeing some really interesting and fascinating startups that have come to our events, and it's growing. For this year in Web Summit Qatar in February, we're going to have our first official Indian delegation attend the event. So I think build upon the success, but GDP per capita growing significantly. The universal payments, I was fascinated by. Certainly, I haven't seen that anywhere else in the world. Implemented so well and so mass.
Absolutely.
So there's, fintech seems like a really exciting space in India, and it seems like a very pragmatic approach from the big banks to kind of partner up with with fintech. So I think there's been a leap forward in India. It's now competing very successfully with the global players and Silicon Valley, etc. I know, like I was talking to somebody yesterday, said about $150 billion invested in Indian startups over the last 10 years or so, but it's about, I think, 80-90% external international money. So I would like to see, I can see it, the number of family offices, the number of people participating in venture capital in India. I think that's a very healthy and shows a very mature technological market.
And what would your message be to the Indian delegation that is going to attend the summit? Because as you mentioned, right, there's the sheer volume of, whether we look at fintech, health tech, ed tech, there's been a sheer volume of players coming into the ecosystem trying to solve problems for a variety of use cases. So as this Indian delegation comes forth to this event, what would your message be to them?
I'd say do your homework. I mean, it is 25,000 people. The chances that you're going to just bump into somebody that has exactly the same objectives that you are, and you're going to, make a successful connection, I think is possible. But I think you can certainly up your chances by perhaps engaging with the app in advance. We make it really easy for people to connect and schedule some meetings. Maybe it's in our Night Summit event, which is kind of more of a party atmosphere and very casual, or maybe it's on the exhibition floor. But you can certainly line up those meetings in advance to make sure you maximize your opportunity at the event.
All right, and what can entrepreneurs from around the world, in your opinion, learn from entrepreneurs in India? What would you say?
I think the adoption of the new technologies, particularly like in fintech, I think that really stands out to me. The universal payments system, just the widespread adoption, I think it looks like something that the world is lagging behind. And in general, I think just the scale of the technology industry, 4.5 million people, as I said, I come from Ireland, that's a population of 4.5 million people. So there's certainly lots to learn there.
And in terms of handling scale, what's been your response to how India and its startups handle scale? Because you would think it would not be possible for such a tiny company in such a small amount of time to handle the scale of this size. In terms of that keyword scale, what's been your reading of the Indian entrepreneurship landscape? Something the European founders can learn from.
I think a European founder is typically, in a country that could be as small as Ireland or as large as Germany, but none of them are as large as India. So ultimately, they're going to have to adapt their products significantly to succeed in the wider European Union market, which is very diverse and has lots of different rules and ways of working. I think you can scale to a global unicorn in India without going outside India, and that's an amazing base.
All right, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to ask you for your last word on the power of connections. If there's a message to be taken out from our fireside chat for the audience around the power of making connections, what would you say to them?
I would say don't so much focus on your, don't be too focused on your specific objective. keeping an open mind seems sometimes you can, speak to the person that you didn't expect to be relevant to what you're trying to achieve, and the conversation opens, or they introduce you to somebody else and kind of broadens the mind. So going in with an open mind is very beneficial for making meaningful connections.
All right, free your mind and the rest will follow. That's the message coming out from Adam Connon. Adam, it's been great to speak with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Cheers.